And we're back.
And we're back.
Dan, the man, for the fourth time.
Number 4, Jesus.
It's been a whole episode since I seen last, so I said I had to have you on.
Appreciate it. It's always a pleasure. Then. Whether we're doing a podcast or not doing a podcast, you know, we love the chats.
Exactly. I was just thinking the other day, anyone could have a podcast if the cameras were rolling. This is how it is. Like any conversation, if once it's caught on camera, it's then a podcast.
Who is it that says, it's probably, there's going to be, warning, there's going to be a million Chris Williamson quotes in this fucking podcast, but is it him that says he recommends that at least once a month guys sit down and do like a fake podcast? Just whatever. You record if you want, but like sit down and have a structured conversation.
It's so important that.
Yeah, it's really
important. Like we actually had a podcast on.
We did have a podcast on.
The title was Conversation is Therapy.
Yeah.
And the whole point is like sit down with someone, don't be distracted. Just be like engaging with them sitting there, because a lot of conversations that happen nowadays between two people are checking their phones.
Yeah.
There's like a bling that goes off and your attention is gone. As soon as your attention is gone, it takes you out of the flow of a conversation. And you've definitely experienced this firsthand. You can get into a flow state with someone by doing a podcast or sitting down and really conversing with them. Because I think what we're missing nowadays, massively so, as we live in this world of distraction, is human connection. And that comes through just, time and attention. You're listening and you're engaged and everything that goes with it. So
and a bit of space.
Bit of space. But anyway, this conversation today is maybe something a bit different because I haven't discussed this before, but it's all about alcohol and kind of, I want to get your views on it because I know you're a man that, has abstained somewhat so, and I know obviously you use it to kind of maybe celebrate or, for a milestone or whatever it might be. But I've recently made a decision to go a year without it, which is not a long time, Dan. 1 year without alcohol I think is very doable, and it is doable, and I will do it. But what's your own views on alcohol? Because obviously you're a businessman, you're a high performer, you run a podcast, you have multiple different, things that you're doing in life. You're also a sportsman. What's your views on alcohol as of now?
Yeah.
Big question,
right? Set the timer there because we'll be here all day. I'm going to give context very, very early in this conversation. I have no problems with alcohol, zero problems with alcohol. Not that I have no problems personally, but I don't have a problem with the substance.
Yeah.
I view it, I think I've told this story before, but I look at it as I used to look at steroids, right? Because I worked in the medical industry. And steroids obviously have a negative connotation. People say the word steroids, it's generally a negative thing. And the only real exposure I had to steroids in the clinic was really positive because we used it from a medical point of view. So I was looking at it, and the landscape around it tended to be quite negative, but I had a positive experience, or there was positive connotations for me. So I was like, this is just a thing, and we decide the meaning that this thing has.
Yeah. So
steroids are like that. Phones and social media get a bad rap, but can also be used massively for business and stuff like that. So again, it's just how you use it. So I look at alcohol the same way. Now, everybody who's listening to this is going to have had and will have a different experience with alcohol, because there's people who've had really bad experiences with alcoholism in families and stuff like that. There's people who've had extremely positive experiences throughout their life and festivals with alcohol. It was a social lubricant. So like me and you now, this is literally just my opinion. All I'm going to share is my opinion and my thoughts and my own perspective on it. But it might hit home with some people, and other people might not resonate with what we're going to talk about today. But my perspective on it, it's just a thing. And our intent and how we use the thing is what I found is most important. So my own alcohol story is not particularly interesting at all.
But how often do you use alcohol then?
So now very rarely, extremely rarely. So I didn't drink at all till I was 18. And then when I was 18, I was playing sport, like a relatively high level. I was playing senior football. Yeah. So it wasn't intercounty or anything like that. It wasn't professional sport.
Big commitment though.
Big commitment.
Yeah.
Really, really valued. It gave me so much in my life, and it demanded a lot in terms of performance. Division 1, Division 2 in Dublin, you have to commit yourself to a certain degree physically, and it never really fit in with my plans. And the kind of social group I was involved in was a mix. So there was a lot of guys who enjoyed a drink and they went out partying, and it was a big culture thing. But there was also guys in the group who didn't really drink. So I wasn't really an outlier. I wasn't a complete weirdo or black sheep. There was 1 or 2 guys always in the group who maybe were only having 1 or 2 or didn't want to drink or whatever. So it wasn't that difficult for me to abstain when I was younger. And I just valued football more. And didn't like what alcohol did to me. Like, I just didn't enjoy it. It doesn't actually sit well with me.
Yeah.
So most of my youth didn't really drink alcohol. Every now and again at a party or something like that, have a few drinks, whatever. Never really enjoyed the hangover. So that was kind of I never really had a really negative experience with alcohol to turn me off. And then as I got a bit older and other important things started to develop in my life, I became a father. I started a business. My time became really important to me. And those detrimental effects of alcohol, the hangover and all that crack, had much more of an impact. So I was it just forced me more and more to decide what I valued. But again, it was never a problem with alcohol necessarily, or me having an issue with it. And then over the last few years specifically, so last year I did what you did this year. I didn't drink all year. And for me, it was a really interesting one because a lot of people do like sober October, or they abstain for 3 months at the start of the year, or they do the dry year, whatever it might be. And I was always really interested because there's a kind of an ego thing around that as well.
I think so, yeah.
I'm not drinking. And it's like, everyone's like, oh my God, Jesus, you're so healthy. That's
fair play, man.
You're getting the fair plays. And I was always thinking like, am I doing this now because I want people to think, oh, he's in the health and wellness and fitness and personal development space, like fair play, doesn't even drink. That's amazing. What a big commitment, loads of discipline. That's incredible. That's what initially draws, I feel, a lot of people to it. Or like, why am I actually doing this? So right now, my relationship with alcohol is it's what I think is really, really healthy. I do drink on occasion. It's extremely rare, and I decide exactly when I want to drink.
Yeah.
And the one thing I noticed about me was like weddings and stuff like that. So social occasions where you're going and you're surrounded by alcohol, and it's kind of the driver for the whole event. Those were the occasions I'd always be like, oh, I might have a drink, and I'd have a few drinks. And then the next day I'd be like, why did I even do that? And so I started to dig a little bit deeper into that, and I realized I was really uncomfortable, socially anxious and uncomfortable around people. So I was using drink to feel a little bit better. And again, that's fine. That's like, I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I was like, okay, I don't want any drink I have to be unconscious. I always want to decide, I'm going to have this drink because it's going to improve this particular situation. Or, for example, my dad likes a really nice whiskey. I know fuck all about whiskey, but I enjoy having a nice whiskey with him because we sit down together. He spends 20 minutes telling me where it came from, and we share a whiskey together, and it's a nice celebration.
Yeah.
So for me, those occasions, it really enhances. But then the weddings and stuff like that, if I'm only doing it because I feel really uncomfortable, I was like, I should probably find out why I'm so uncomfortable rather than just drinking to not make me feel uncomfortable and then suffering the consequences of drinking.
Yeah.
So it's kind of boring, really, but that's how I started to think a little bit more deeply about like alcohol. And now, as a result of that, anything, food, social media, anything that's kind of an impulsive go-to.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, can I be a bit more maybe conscious and intentional?
I think what you're describing best there is that you have control over the substance. I think that's really, really important. So you're intentional about when you have it, whether it's with your dad, having the whiskey, or, find out a bit more about yourself. Like when you're at that wedding, why did I have them few drinks? Well, it's just to reduce the anxiety and then the social conformity that goes with it. But I think, I suppose in a very modern world nowadays, we just do everything to fit in with one another, and it's social conformity, and then it's also to take away any anxiety, social anxiety. I think that's a big part of it. And I think another thing you mentioned there, time becomes so valuable, and the days being hungover are non-productive, and that can lead into a whole week of just not being productive and not getting forward or doing anything or even achieving anything. So yeah, the mental clarity is massive, and I think you're definitely a man that's got a very positive mindset, obviously being around you and knowing you, but it's like that is so negatively affected. Your whole state of mind, your whole state of being, that anxiety that comes with being hungover, and just I think there's more negatives associated with drinking than there is positives. And then your situation now that you're describing, you've definitely better control of it, whereas it's a net negative. Like you'll use it maybe to enjoy the moment of being with your dad, or if you're at a wedding now, what would you tend to do?
Interesting, like to almost contradict what I just said. I was at a wedding on Saturday there. Lovely wedding, actually. Kilronan Castle, very nice venue for a wedding. It's like a medieval castle. But myself and Jill, when we go to weddings, just my fiance, when we go to weddings, 95% of the time I'm driving home because I'll either have football the next day or I'm not really interested in the drinking side of things. So it gives me sometimes it was an excuse for me to not drink. I was like, oh, I have to drive Jill home or whatever like that. But we actually made a conscious decision for this one because we hadn't been to a wedding in ages, and we haven't actually had, like, we've a 9-month-old baby as well and 2 other kids. So we haven't really had a time out together. And Jill said to me, what do you think about maybe staying over? I was like, you know what? We'll have a few drinks. We'll stay over. We'll make an occasion out of it. So we were counting yesterday. I was like, how many drinks did I actually have? I think I had 3.5 drinks over the course of the wedding. Really enjoyed them. Lovely pint of Guinness. Nice whiskey towards the end.
Nice. And
because I knew we had decided to do that, there was no guilt. I didn't have any bad feelings or negativity associated with it. So we did the thing. We said we were going to do the thing. We did the thing. Woke up the next day, not really hungover because we danced for like 4 hours and drank a ton of water. But it was intentional. We knew we were going to do it. And I wasn't doing it because I knew I was going to feel uncomfortable at the wedding. We just decided together, we'd like to do this. It'll enhance the occasion. We haven't been out together.
And you're conscious of it. That's a massive thing.
It's just a bit of awareness around it.
It's awareness. A lot of people drink and they become more unconscious, and then they keep on drinking. Drink is just, it's one of them things. And look, I'm giving up for a year. I'm not doing it,
Is it for the ego,
to
James? Is
get
it
the
for
applause.
the clout?
Maybe it is.
It's
Who
for the
knows?
clout.
It's for the clout, then. It's for the clout. But it's more just to become more consistent in my own life and become more productive. And I feel like if I was to have a few drinks here and there, it would just knock off 1 or 2 days. But then 1 or 2 days add up.
Yeah.
And then that'll turn into, it could turn into a few weeks.
So here's my question for you, right? Why are you making the decision to give up drink and not just to reduce your drinking? So, for example, rather than having 3 or 4, could you have 1 or 2?
I could possibly, Dan, but I often find out if you're out for just 1 or 2 drinks, which I was only 2 or 3 weeks ago, turned into 5 or 6 drinks. And I woke up and I'm lucky enough that nowadays, for whatever reason, I have a better ability to handle a hangover. I think the healthier you are, just the better it goes through your system. But I'm like, I don't even want to deal with that because I was I'd say the day, not the initial day after, but the day after that, I wasn't as sharp. And I don't like not being as sharp as I could possibly be because it means I'm missing out on work or I'm missing out on opportunity or I'm just not at the place where I need to be. And the same thing for you. I meant like if you came in here hungover in the day, that would affect your business.
Oh, this is the big thing for me. If I have more than 3 or 4 drinks, I pay for that for a week. So the first day or two, it's hangover time and you're not feeling great and you're eating a little bit shit or not training as much, etc., etc. But that kicks everything down the road.
Yeah.
The biggest change for me was having children, because they don't care if you're hungover
So many
or
people
not.
say that, though.
And it's not that it's really annoying for me to be hungover while the kids are there. It's that I'm less present and engaged with my kids. I feel shit because I'm not fathering my children because I'm feeling sorry for myself or I've got a hangover. So it's not that I just don't want the kids screaming at me, I've got a headache, couldn't handle it. Because a lot of people say that.
Yeah.
It's more, usually if you go drinking, it's a Friday, Saturday. So I'm screwing up my Saturday, Sunday with the kids. And I don't get a huge amount of time, more extra time during the week with them. So weekends are kind of our time to be together.
Yeah.
So if I'm feeling terrible, I know I'm going to be more withdrawn and not going to be present and I'm going to miss out on that time.
And how irresponsible is that of a father to even put yourself in that position?
I'm not going to make a judgment here because some people genuinely, it's the only slice of happiness they have in their life. So I'm not making a judgment call here on people who drink on a Friday and a Saturday and have kids, whatever. Like it's all about an individual decision. But for me, I know I'm never getting that weekend at my kids back. And that eats at me because I have a bit of awareness around it now. If I was unconscious around it, it wouldn't really bother me that much. But now every weekend that goes by, I'm never getting it back again. Yeah. My youngest started crawling there last week and now he's fucking zooming around. 2 weeks ago, he was a baby. That's gone forever now. If I had not, we brought him to the wedding. So we were crawling around at the wedding.
Yeah.
But if I missed that weekend and I'm not present for that, that's gone forever. So for me, that means a lot. Now, again, this is not a judgment piece. It doesn't really bother me what other people do. But it's not worth that for me. And then that knocks off the week because I come into Monday and I'm a bit anxious and not really productive. And then that throws off what I should have done. So my Tuesday and Wednesday, it's a knock-on effect for me.
Massive knock-on
Yeah,
effect.
and for me, it's just not worth it. And that's just a decision I make. No problem with the actual substance itself. There's no judgment around that. But for me and the way I want to live my life, it just doesn't fit. So I'm like, but every now and again, like last Saturday, it was amazing. It was brilliant. It really enhanced the experience. It was lovely.
It's planned, but I think you're on a higher purpose. Like you're you've got a lot of meaning behind your life as well, which I think is you almost abstain from substances. If I get that word out, that are like going to have a negative effect on you if you're just on a mission. I find like when you're on a path and when you want to achieve something, it's like I don't mind not drinking because it's not fitting into what I'm doing anyway.
Yeah.
And I just think that's definitely an example for in a general sense, because I've often heard like people drink to reduce the pain that they're feeling, any negative emotions. It is a form of escapism. How, just from your own experience of talking to multiple people, Dan, how do you feel people could handle, their own maybe situation or problems they have in their own life by not drinking? Because I think a lot of people go to alcohol and go to drink because it's a way just to not feel the emotion or the pain of what they're experiencing. I think it's very common in Irish culture, definitely, and I see it firsthand as well. It's like, we use it for a lot of things, whether it's a social occasion, but I think a lot of people use it to numb themselves.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, this is where it gets a bit complex, right? This is where the conversation is really nuanced because, like I said just before this, I've no judgment for people who are really struggling in their lives for whatever reason, the situation, their psychological well-being, whatever, and alcohol is their break from that. It could be the only break they get. I don't particularly think it's the healthiest way of doing that, but no judgment. I have things that help me cope. Might not be alcohol, it could be other things that help me cope with how I'm feeling sometimes. So zero judgment, just to give opinions on this now, really. I think anything that we reach for to try and distract ourselves from how we're feeling is probably not the optimal way to do it. But trying to develop a sense of awareness and build the tools to help you feel better rather than to reach for the distraction, that's hard.
Yeah.
And there's never only one thing going on in your life. Like there's 50 or 60 things going on in people's life. People have a way harder life than me, by the way, as well. So I understand why we rely on that. I worked in a clinic where we dealt with a lot of addiction, and the core root of addiction is pain in most cases. Like Gabor Mate will talk about this as well. Trauma and pain and past experiences will form the basis for most addictions. People have social media addictions, sex addictions, food addictions, alcohol addictions. It's usually all coming from the same thing. It's pain of some sort. And you develop behaviors and habits and routines to help you cope with the pain. So when we started thinking about it like that, it's less about the alcohol. Alcohol is just the most accessible, socially acceptable, easy way to go when it comes to managing your pain, I think, because you can go into the shop and buy it.
Yeah.
No one blinks twice at you when you sink 20 points at the weekend. Like nobody.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's socially acceptable because it is something that can be used as a social lubricant, and it can make us feel happier, and that's why we gravitate towards it. None of us want to feel pain. We want to get away from the pain. The rat experiment, you're well familiar with. And we want to go towards what doesn't feel painful. And if that's numbness or an hour of like joy or bliss where we're not thinking about our problems, I get it. Like I absolutely get it. I know what that feels like. I have distractions myself. It just happens not to be alcohol. So yeah, 100% agree with you. We use it to numb our pain. That's probably the most human thing I know. Like we don't want to feel pain. We want to get away from it. So, but the really hard thing I find in most countries, not just this country, but like let's talk about what we know, is that it's normal. And you put that quote in the notes that we were looking at as well. Like it's the one drug that you looked at weird if you don't do it is alcohol, because it's so ingrained in our culture. So if there's something ingrained in our culture, everyone expects it to do it. You're surrounded by it all the time, and it helps you not feel the way you're feeling right now. Like it's a no-brainer that we reach for it. Obviously,
I get that. But then there's so many problems that come from that.
Yeah,
I feel like you're compounding the problem up even more.
Yeah.
I mean, all that time and energy and money, if you invested into like, okay, look, I've got this issue, whatever it might be, this pain that is killing me. Is alcohol the solution, or could the option of, say, for an example, therapy?
Yeah.
Would my money be better spent if I went to therapy to figure out the problem, and then if I like alcohol so much at some stage, I could go back into it?
So here's my question for you, right?
Go for it.
You talk to somebody who has an addiction, alcohol, cigarettes, whatever it might be. They all know that. Every single one of those people understands that concept. That I should probably sort out the reason why I feel so terrible, or like even your casual social drinker, they probably don't like their job that much and they're under a lot of pressure and they know where all that's coming from. But the actual solution you're talking about is long term and there's no immediate gratification. Reaching for alcohol, it works. This is the problem with it.
Yeah.
It works. This is what I used to say about steroids as well. The problem with steroids is that they work. It's the abuse of the thing and the intent around the thing is the problem, not the thing itself. Alcohol works really, really well to help you forget your problems, but it's so temporary.
It's so temporary.
And the cons, the list just gets bigger and bigger the more you do it. So that's the problem. But we're wired for the short term. We're wired for the sweet, for the numbing of the pain. But we want that now because it used to be so hard to get way back when. And we're still wired for that. I know everything is so easy to get.
But I know it numbs initially the pain that you're feeling at the moment, and obviously that's what people do.
That makes it 1,000 times worse.
Yeah. It's like, I think there's an example in one of Jordan Peterson's books. I think it was 12 Rules for Life, and it was about this monster that lived under the house, and they kept ignoring the monster, and he got bigger and bigger. To one day he lifted up the house and ran away with it. Right, and the point being is like your problems will only compound if you do not face them, which is very hard and difficult to do. But in the long term, it's the best solution. Because if you keep, reaching for the bottle, reaching for that drink, and keep on doing that, you're not facing what's going on in your life. And I think a great word that you use is awareness. If you've got some sort of awareness of the problem and try and figure it out. That's the kind of message I like to get across here. It's like, without running away and distracting yourself, and that escapism, I think that's the best term to just give it. Without doing that and just facing the problem, you might find a way to solve it. Yeah. But if you keep going down that road of consuming alcohol over and over again, because I just think there's so many negative things associated. Like you get so sloppy, you say things you shouldn't say, you do things you shouldn't do. Like I think it's crazy stuff. I actually heard Pearson say this as I was watching a few videos about alcohol, and like I think 50% of all murders, come from people being drunk. It's crazy, and car crashes and just all the negative things you can think comes down to this one drug that, like you said, Dan, is socially acceptable, which is madness. But
So just to build on that point, right? Let's look at the landscape around alcohol. So there is no real, now there are pockets of it, so I'm not saying there's nothing, but there's no real support structure to help people what you've just described there. It's so difficult to do several things as a human. To develop a sense of awareness around something that's painful, because you don't want to shine a light on the darkness or look at the monster because it's fucking sore and terrifying. You want to lean away from that, not in. So that's really hard, right? You've got obviously an entire industry built around alcohol that's constantly pushing the lifestyle. You will be happy if you drink. Look at all these people on a mountain with sunglasses on, snowboarding and drinking Coors Light. Like fucking, I don't know if we say it on the podcast, we'd be sued now. But there's a whole industry built around pushing this drug that we know you have Diageo, drink responsibly, as in the tiny little writing under the picture of the good looking girl going, yeah, drink and you'll be attractive to me. So there's that, right? So there's the human element, there's that. Then there's the healthcare system, which almost, not quite, but they're dealing with the outcomes. So they're dealing with the metabolic health and the obesity and the liver disease as a result of alcohol, and they demonize it. So they bring a lot of shame to people who drink. Oh, you're an alcoholic. How many drinks do you have in a week? So they bring shame to the thing that you're doing. So none of those three things are going to make it easy for the person to do what you've just suggested there. But where we always have this discussion, take for example, Adonis, the group that you're building.
Yeah.
You're working on not just building physical strength, but building a sense of connection and support for young men. Men have connection and support, and they maybe feel less alone with their problems. They feel less inclined to have to lean into drink. You're helping people with mindfulness and breath work and meditation and journaling, which helps people develop self-awareness. And within the container of a support system. So they've got other men there to support them. That is something that could potentially help people with drink, because all of these other things are only making the problem worse. And we don't have a lot of Adonis groups or support groups where people are literally sitting down and trying to understand, where does the drinking come from? It comes from pain and behavior. And so that's the final thing with the trauma, that makes it a really difficult habit. It starts off leaning away from the pain and just becomes habitual. Everyone's doing it. You do it every weekend. It becomes the thing that you do. And we know how hard it is to break habits. Easy to read Atomic Habits, very hard to implement what's in that book.
Guaranteed.
So I just think it's why I agree with everything you've said, but I know how difficult it is for people to rewire that impulse, because I've named 5 things there, and only one of those things is something that actually supports people to maybe lean away from this and develop a sense of awareness. Because it all comes down to awareness. Like I said, that pain, the monster under the house, the same thing. It all comes down to that. That's why we do these things. So keep doing it, honest, if I'm saying to you.
Yeah. I think awareness of habit. But I think we're coming into a new age where there's more light and people understand, the negative association and effects of drink on the human body and your brain as well. I mean, you're not thinking clearly at all when you're drinking alcohol. I
have another thought on that. Can I keep going?
Go for it.
You invite me in this podcast now, so I'm going to keep talking here. I think one thing we've seen, actually, maybe to counteract something I just said, a lot of these tribes that are popping up in the fitness world or the health world, C-swims, men's work and women's work groups, like High Rocks and CrossFit and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Those cultural movements or tribes are giving people a sense of shared purpose. So like people become really addicted to High Rocks, which it can cause some problems, fine, but it's a much, much better thing to spend all your time on than drinking and doing drugs or just working all the time.
Exactly. And
within that, it's a fitness-based thing.
Yeah.
So people then say, oh, we're not drinking, and then nobody's drinking. It becomes normalized to not drink, because now we're all going out for our runs on a Friday and our HIIT sessions on a Saturday and our weights on a Sunday, whatever it might be. And all of a sudden, the drink doesn't serve that purpose anymore, because they all have a sense of support, community, connection, and a shared purpose. We're doing this thing.
And that's what you get from drink.
And that's you kind of get that from drink, but now they don't need to drink anymore. Yeah. And they might still have pain, but now they're in this community that supports them, and they have another outlet for that. They have another way to express themselves.
It's social gathering. It's community, like you just mentioned. Like, that's what it's all about. Like, if you're so habitual, where you're just so used to going to the pub and drinking with your mates or whatever it is, that's ingrained in you, and then you get a lot of your human needs through drinking. It's like variety, contribution, sense of community. Tony Robbins has one. There's 6 of them. I don't know if you know.
Significance is one.
Significance, yeah. Like, you feel you're part of the
You feel
tribe.
like you're the man when you're drinking as well.
Yeah.
You feel significant, yeah.
That's the thing. And like, you can get it in other forms. And I think we're coming into a new age, like run clubs are popping off. Yeah. And like you mentioned, High Rocks events or even CrossFit classes. People are like, I want to socialize, but I don't want to do it with alcohol anymore, because, it's so detrimental to my health. Like, no one out there is an alcoholic influencer. Name one. There's not any, because it's so detrimental to your health. It's not a good way to live. It's not a good way to be. And no one I heard Andrew Huberman say this, and he's like, when you see like an older person, say past the age of 25 onwards, and they get drunk, they're very infantile. Like they're like a big baby that have just let themselves run ragged, and no one looks at that going fair play. You're like, oh, get your shit together. Like it's not a good way to be at all. But I think one point you touched on there is that sense of community. We want to feel something, Dan. We want to be around people. We want to have that, and I suppose so normal, especially in Irish society, that happens in a pub or wherever else. And look, I'm not demonizing drink because I actually think it's great fun. Don't get me wrong, it's a great variety with it, but it's like there's different ways to socialize is what I'm trying to say. And it's definitely something you experience. I mean, like, you don't drink all that much now. I know you've got your football team and you've got different outings, and you're building a community in here in the Prymal studio. But it's like that. I think that's what we're seeking deep down. Is we really want to be around people that are like ourselves. I think it's very important. But any more thoughts on that point?
No, I think you've covered it well there. Like, those primal needs drive everything we do. Those fundamental drivers for everything we do and every decision that we make.
Yeah.
Like everything, even our drive to become successful in the workplace is driven by a need for respect and acceptance and significance and contribution and all those different things. So, like, this is what I was saying at the start. Everything comes back to those fundamental feelings. It's not about the drink. It's not about the steroids or the social media or food or anything like this. Obesity is another one. It's the same as alcoholism. It's driven emotionally by something inside you. It's a way to cope. It's a way to feel comfortable. It's a way to satisfy the demons in your head a little bit, or quieten down or whatever. It's all the same thing.
Yeah.
Now, there's obviously some outliers and exceptions to that, but in general, for most people, it's all coming from that lack of connection, purpose, whatever. I remember speaking, it was Owen Lacey, I think I tell the story almost every 2 or 3 weeks, when we were talking in the very early days when I met him years and years ago. And we're talking about all the different risk factors for health. And you've all the usual stuff like blood markers and hormone profile and diet and sleep and all that kind of stuff. And then he mentioned 2 other things. And he mentioned the quality of your relationships and your sense of purpose. I was like, wow, it's the first time I've ever heard anyone in a medical context talk about these as risk factors and significant building blocks for health. And they've now become almost the most important things, because if you have poor quality relationships, support system, network, etc., and you don't have a sense of purpose in your life, all of these other things become options for you immediately to make you feel a little bit better. The food, the drink, and the bad lifestyle, whatever, they all become options because of those 2 things. If you have good quality in those 2 areas, good quality relationships, whether it's intimate relationships, romantic relationships, friends, whatever, and you have a sense of purpose in your life, it's very unlikely you're going to go down those paths, because you have a set of values for yourself. You have a bit of awareness around who you are and what you want to do. You have people around you, like the old cliche of you are the 5 people you surround yourself with. You've got a network of people around you who are positively influencing your life, either by you looking at them and being inspired, or by them putting their hand on your back when you're struggling a little bit and bringing you forward. That's massive, because everything else you do is going to be dictated by those 2 things.
Guarantee.
It's huge. Like, so when it comes to health, and we talk about health all the time, and we ignore that stuff, people think that stuff is the airy fairy. It's literally the fundamental driver behind most of the decisions we make.
Yeah.
And the decisions we make, they are our lives. Like, what you eat, how you sleep, where you go, who you spend your time with, what you put in your body, how much you drink. They're all decisions you make based off how you feel. All of them.
And like you said, meaning is so important as well. Yeah, that sense of meaning, like, why you're here.
Yeah.
And then community is massive as well. Like, that's such a big part of it. Relationships are so important.
Yeah.
Because what is this life you can't share with anyone?
Yeah.
And I suppose that would drive you to the point of drinking nearly. If you didn't have that, if you didn't have them intimate relationships, like someone you can confide in, I think it is honestly the most valuable thing you can have in life is good friends, and family and loved ones and whatever it might be. It's like, you've got to have that, because it's good for your psyche. I think more than anything, what did they say? It's like loneliness is just as bad as smoking like 20 cigarettes a day.
And it's exact same point there. It's brilliant. It's the same thing. People hear that and they go, we'll just stop smoking. Obviously it causes cancer and affects your lungs and all that kind of stuff. But loneliness causes you to make decisions that are way worse for your health. Like, way worse for your health. Like, why do people start smoking? Because they want to be accepted in the group, and it's cool, and
must be
peer pressure. And for the most part, like
the hardest feeling to face, just to be alone. And that's the crazy thing. Like, we're living in a day and age with this digital age with social media. People feel more than alone now than ever.
Yeah.
Than ever.
This is why we have all of these health complications now that didn't exist 30 or 40 years ago, because we didn't have these technologies. And again, social media is one that comes up too in the same sentence as alcohol. Like it's just another thing.
It's another
It can
addiction.
be massively powerful. I can share
Great
videos and stuff. I can build a community. I've built my business using these platforms and meeting people I never would have met in my normal day-to-day life. Incredibly powerful too, but also incredibly, incredibly dangerous because it can isolate you from everybody else. It can give you a sense of insufficiency and less than because you're comparing yourself to everybody. So it's again your awareness when you pick up that phone and you're going on Instagram, like how self-aware are you? Are you literally just consuming every single thing that goes by and allowing that to bypass your filtration system and just hit you right in the brain? And oh, I'm a piece of shit. Oh, I'm a piece of shit. Oh, look at how great all these people are doing. Oh my God, I'm terrible. And just make you worse? Or are you looking at this really objectively and going, okay, this is fine. I'm consciously scrolling through this and I'm just ignoring all the bullshit and I'm looking for something specific here, be it a sense of connection with friends or to learn something or to be inspired by something or to create something. Like it's the same thing you're doing. You're scrolling on Instagram, but your intent around it is completely different. Same as alcohol, same as everything else. Like, am I going to have this drink? And am I really going to engage in the conversation and like enjoy the pint and experience the room? Or am I just drinking this? One, because everybody's doing it. Two, it's because of what I've done before. Or three, because I feel so shit. I need to not feel like this anymore. You're doing the same thing. You're drinking the same pint, but your intent and awareness around it is completely different. So it's the same thing. It all stems. I'm going to just hammer this point over and over again. It all stems from the same place, I think, in people.
And it's pain.
Pain,
yeah.
And pain can be caused by all the things we talk about, lack of connection, community, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't feel good as humans.
Yeah, and what would your advice be to say for a younger guy that's out there and he's caught in that cycle of going to the pub on the weekend and it's literally point in the hand and he can't be seen without it, and it's like you're just caught and you probably know in your own head, geez, this isn't what I want to do or where I want to be, but it's what I'm caught in. If you were to give any advice how to guide him maybe down a better path, what would that be?
I don't like giving advice. I'm not in a position to give an advice. But if I was to share my opinion,
some advice,
I'll share my opinion and so it might help somebody because as I said, everyone's context is different.
Yeah, no, I get that.
They might be using drink to just keep something up at whatever. But if I was to share my opinion, I really do believe that in the power of your environment, because it can be really, really hard, especially when you're younger. Like I'm in my mid-30s now, and I'm only starting to peel back the layers and try and figure out like who am I and what do I want. And excuse me, sometimes when I'm speaking, I want to make it really clear that I am like on the first few steps of this journey of trying to develop a sense of awareness and be really intentional about how I live my life and really be present and all that kind of stuff. I'm not, but come back to me in 20 years and I'll still be saying the same thing. I'm trying to figure this out. But if I was younger, I think that the fastest route to pulling yourself out of that is to put yourself in an environment that supports that. Because I think trying to sit down and journal and go through therapy, they're all amazing tools, but that's a lifelong process of trying to uncover who you are and develop new behaviors and stuff like that. I think if you surround yourself with really good people, it accelerates that process by a million, because you're literally every day surrounded by people who want to pull you up, who are living lives that kind of can help set an example for how you could live your life. So like if you are somebody who goes to the pub a lot and there's a part of you decides, and you have to decide this, like this doesn't sit right. I don't feel right. I don't really want to be doing this. If that's where you're at, I would suggest maybe looking at changing your environment. And like, what does that look like on a practical basis? Because it's easy to say that is look at what that week looks like. And if you're working Monday to Friday and going out with the lads on the Friday night and the Saturday is the only piece of happiness that you get, are there other social activities that you actually enjoy that maybe don't involve drink, that you can, even if you don't know anyone who's doing them, that you can just start to explore? Is it golf? Is it going down the beach for a dip on a Saturday morning? Is it one of these run clubs? Is it high rocks? Is it like, you probably have to kiss a few frogs and try a few things, but very quickly you'll start to recognize that the people who are doing these things have just a different mindset than the people who are maybe in the pub on a Friday night. And there's a lot of crossover there. Again, not demonizing the pub on a Friday night, it's fine. But if you want to do a certain thing, you kind of have to surround yourself with a certain type of people. So that for me, it's always, how can you change your environment to support what you're doing? Because if you're in the same environment and you're trying to change your mindset, like this is what I really struggle with. Okay, I'm going to make a change in my life. Nothing else changes. Like same friends, same house, same family, same room in here, same color on the walls, everything. And I'm just sitting here like forcing myself to change who I am fundamentally. It's so hard. If I go and meet somebody for a walk in the woods, or I go and do a class, or I go to a webinar, or go to an event where other people are who are doing the thing I want, immediately I'm inspired.
Yeah.
I'm completely pulled out of my environment. I'm inspired. And then I get talking to somebody. I'm like, I've never had a conversation like that before in my life. It's incredible. Like, you've experienced this. That's incredible. And then you all of a sudden realize that your life, we were living like this, and I'll never get out of this, and this is how life is, to, oh my God, there's possibilities everywhere. And that mightn't be, that first thing you do, you might be like, I didn't really enjoy that, but it showed me that I can do something a bit different. And very quickly you'll build a social group on whatever it is, if it's the gym, if it's sport, if it's a reading group, whatever.
Because that's the thing, people are so inviting as well.
People love to accept you into the thing that they love doing.
Exactly. And I think a great point that you hit on there is the environment, the energy of the room.
It's everything, I think.
It literally, you are a product of your environment.
Yeah.
So can you put yourself maybe in a different place where you know you're going to be uplifted? You'll have that sense of community as well. And it's just better for your health, your mind, and everything else that goes with it.
Yeah. What I don't suggest, sorry to cut across you, what I don't suggest for a lot of people who maybe, I won't say dependency, but really lean on alcohol, is to just, right, I'm going off it for a year, because like,
it's too drastic.
It tends to be unsustainable. It's like any big habit that you want to break or change. Like, you can't say, right, that's it now. If you're, say for example, you're overweight and you want to lose weight, right, 1,000 calories now from now, you're going to be back to the normal diet in a week. Because it's there for a reason. It's helping you with something. It's helping you manage something. If you completely get rid of that crutch straight away, you're going to feel the full force of whatever it is that you're not.
You probably rebound 10 times stronger as well.
It's just the tail is all the time like that. It's not sustainable, so you can't maintain it. So I'm not suggesting like drop it all and go off the alcohol for a year, whatever. Like, you're not doing it for that reason. You don't have a dependency. But yeah, I would suggest just starting to look at changing your environment there. And it doesn't mean firing friends and fucking never talking to people again or anything like that at all. It just means, right, what's something else I might enjoy? Let me try that environment out and see how it makes me feel, and can maybe support me living my life a little bit differently. I probably think that's the best place to start for most people.
And for you, when you gave it up for a year, was there any significant changes that you noticed from staying away from alcohol?
I drink maybe 3 or 4 times a year, and even just making the decision, I just felt way better.
You felt empowered?
I felt empowered, yeah, because I made the decision. I didn't have an issue with drink. I didn't drink regularly. It wasn't affecting my life in any real way. I don't even know why I did it, to be honest with you. At the start, I was like, you know what? I'm having 2 drinks, watching the game on a Sunday, whatever. I might just cut that out just for the year. And then I had the conversation myself, am I just doing this to be the guy who doesn't drink? Like, so I can say, oh, I don't drink, and goes, oh my God, you don't drink. It's amazing. So I had to go through that phase, and I was like, oh, there's a bit of that actually. And I had to go through that a little bit. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to just give it up and see how my life feels. And if it feels good. Sorry, Brian was doing that at the same time, and he planned to give it up for a year. And I just said, I'm just going to take it situation by situation. So every time there's an opportunity to drink, I'm going to look at it and say, I decide yes or I decide no. And every single time I was like, no, it's not going to serve me, not going to serve me. And then all of a sudden I was like 8 months in, and Brian was like, I'm doing the year. And I was like, and then we got to the year, and I was like, amazing. And then I had a whiskey.
That's mad.
And there was no big like, right, I did the year. It was like, no, it's just the same now. I've just built that habit of every single time there's an opportunity for me to have a drink.
Yeah.
I just say, do I need this drink or want this drink? And most times like, no, I was just going to do it because it was automatic. Because I happened to be at this party, because I happened to be at the wedding, because I happened to be sitting watching the game. There's no drink in my house now because like Jill doesn't drink either. So now if I want to drink, I have to go, right, I'd like a drink with the match on Friday or on Sunday. Like, there's a game on Sunday. Usually I'd be like, right, I'm going to have a pint. But because I drank last weekend, I'm not going to touch the stuff.
Good man.
But if it was in the house, I might be like,
it's temptation though.
Do you know what? And I might have a can.
Yeah.
But now I don't. And that's because it's my decision. So like, I just built a different relationship with it. And like I said, I didn't have an issue. But for me, I just felt more empowered about it. And like, now I'm trying to take that and apply it to other things in my life. Like, stop picking my phone up in 5 seconds.
That's the thing as well. Like, once you can control, how you drink or what you drink, you can start tapping into other things. It's like, it's just you're building discipline around a habit. Habit stacking as well then. Yeah. And like, and was there anything significant that popped up when you stopped drinking for a while? Is there anything you also stopped doing as well? Or is there anything you're more conscious about? Because we're all slightly addicted to something in life, whether it's the phone, whether it's drinking.
Some things that were really obvious that came up is obviously when I drink, I eat a bit shitter. So obviously I know it's that. I was like, I can eat a little bit better now because I'm not having the impulses. The one thing I mentioned was a real sense of situations where I get anxious, that maybe reaching for something like a drink would be, now again, it was so rare, but like social occasions, going out and stuff like that, it's just not my thing, and I would get anxious around it. So I really got more aware of that because there was no option for having a drink. I was like, I'm not drinking tonight. And then I get there and be like, oh, feeling a bit anxious here now, and you're like, I'll just have a drink, and I have made a decision previous, so there's no option there. So I'm like, oh no, why am I so anxious? And then you kind of work through that and go, there's actually no reason for me to be anxious here. It was a behavior, it was a pattern, like, so stuff like that came. I became more aware then of other things like reaching for the phone and stuff like that. And again, I don't have a problem necessarily with it, but now I'm just have more awareness around it. So like 20 minutes scrolling on Instagram is I don't feel good after it. And
brain rot.
It's just brain rot. But now I'm so aware of like, I just feel a bit shit after doing that. So I'm like, now when the hand goes from, like, I'm going to feel shit after.
And how have you personally increased your own awareness? Because that's what it comes down to. Whether it's drinking, whether it's on the phone, whether it's any of these like habits that don't serve you too well. Because you've had to become aware of the habit and of your behavior towards it to address it. So, because I think a lot of people just, do things unconsciously.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they do. They don't even realize that they're, drinking excessively or doing different behaviors that have a negative effect on their health and their well-being and their lifestyle. How would you advise, or, how have you, from your own point of view, developed awareness?
Doing
podcasts.
Genuinely building the business and doing the podcast. I always knew this stuff. This is what I say about my Bring Up Atomic Habits a lot. Everybody knows what's in that book. Everybody understands what a habit is. Everybody has read the self-help books. Like, people have shelves and shelves and shelves of it now, but that's kind of another ego thing. I've read the book. So everyone has the information. I had all the information. I was in the health and performance world for years. I knew all the things, but wasn't implementing any of it. When I started building the business and like doing the podcast and having all these conversations with people who had a really deep understanding of, for example, human psychology or emotional well-being or psychological health or habit formation, human performance, fitness, all these kind of things, it became really obvious to me that I wasn't implementing the stuff, because I'd be sitting here in a conversation and we'd be talking like this, and going through my head, I'd be like, you are so full of shit, man. Like, I'd just be saying it to myself, going, you're having this great conversation with James now. As I'm sitting here now talking to you, this is literally how I live my life. So I'm sitting here going, you're not a fraud. You're talking about exactly what your experience is. This is fine. But that wasn't the case for me before. I was talking about the things like on an intellectual level, like throwing out the quotes and the authors and the books I've read and the podcasts I've listened to. And I was like, you're fucking full of shit, man. You're not actually doing any of this. You're just talking about it. So that forced me to become more self-aware. And then running the business as well, it's a great fucking exercise to develop self-awareness, because there's no hiding. When you start or run a small business or have a project like this, you are the only person. You're to blame for everything. So if the thing doesn't grow or there's an issue with a client or whatever, it's not working, it's fucking all your fault. So the thing either fails or you can develop a bit of self-awareness. Now, what helped me was Mr. O'Loughlin, Brian, helped me develop self-awareness by holding up the mirror for me. So he mentored me through the early stages of my business. I'm literally, every time I walked in, he just held up a mirror and said, you're fucking bullshitting, pal. So it just forced me to start going, oh yeah, I am responsible for how I feel. Yeah. Like, literally, I am responsible.
That's interesting. You just touched on, obviously, Brian there and how he coached you and helped you become more aware. It's a great book I'm reading at the moment because I'm into self-development. But it's called Who Not How, right? And like, we can, ask ourselves, how do we become more self-aware? Maybe it's just the help of someone else.
Yeah.
It's the who.
Yeah.
It's the who that can help you out. It's the same author that actually wrote 10X is Better Than 2X.
Dan
Sullivan.
Sullivan, yes.
Yeah. This book is very, very good, Dan. You could relate to as well. But that kind of collaboration helps. So for someone out there, it might be like, having a friend that holds you accountable, because, you can live a whole life, Dan, and never have any kind of reflection or analysis of it, and just get lost amongst just everything that happens. I think self-awareness is very important. That's the beginning of any change in your life, is when you become aware of yourself, aware of your behaviors, aware of your actions, aware of your impulses, aware of your drinking habits, and that's the key. I would almost say that's the golden line in this podcast, this conversation, is awareness, the importance of it. And awareness just basically is to notice. That's how you could frame it as.
And that's why I was saying, you were asking me for the advice, the power of environment, because you'll find those people who can actually help you become a little bit more self-aware, even if it's only by their presence, by being in their presence. It shines a light on areas of you. And it's not about comparing yourself to other people, but it's more about being able to see how other people live their lives. And if that's something that really feels good to you or resonates with you, you can see where there are potentially areas you can grow into. So again, really important point, don't compare yourself to other people. But if you put yourself in the environment where people are doing the type of things or seem to be living the type of life that you would like to live, there's lessons for you to be learned there. And that's a much easier start because it gives you that bit of accountability and it gives you that bit of connection and network than trying to do it yourself. Like I needed Brian, I needed the business, I needed all these things to hold up the mirror for me, because I knew all the things and wasn't holding the mirror up because it was too painful. It's really hard for me to turn around and go, you know what, Dan, you need to sort these parts of your life out. So instead, I had someone else, in a very nice way, obviously, go, these are areas that you say you want to work on and you're not doing the work. And subsequently the podcast, me sitting in conversations like this, 40 minutes in going, I am so full of shit. And finishing the podcast and everyone going, that was amazing. That was really enjoyed that episode. And me going, now I feel like a total fucking fraud. Because I talk about this stuff like it's coming from a place of experience. And a lot of it was just coming from a place of I've read it or seen it on a podcast.
And for you then, what kind of, turned the tide? Was it just the implementation
just that constant pain, that constant friction of me going, fuck sake.
But you used pain in a good way there. Because a lot of, you could have went down the road of drinking then. You know what I mean?
And this is the point I always make. This is why I say it without judgment. I know what it feels like to feel like so shit. And I spoke openly about this before, I think on your podcast too. I went through a couple of years of really poor psychological health as well. And there's always the option. It's so easy to do anything to ease that pain. And that's what you want. That's what you want to go for.
But I think you had awareness to know if you tried to ease that pain with some substance like alcohol, it would compound your problem even more.
I don't know why. It wasn't specifically awareness, but I think I just had a bit of knowledge from working in the world and seeing people who struggle with addiction and stuff. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just pure luck that I didn't go down that pathway. And again, that's why I try and remove all judgment from this. There's no shame or judgment. But if you want to live a better life, if you want to reach your potential, if you want to experience more from your time here, personally, I don't think maybe let's go back to the point you made. I don't think doing anything in an unconscious way is going to bring you any closer to experiencing that life. I think the more conscious you are, there's a bit of pain and a bit of frustration to work through there at the start, and you really have to work on it, and it's a lifelong thing. But I personally have felt it massively improved the quality of my life. So my days, my hours, my minutes are better. My relationships are better.
You said it so well there, Dan. I only had this conversation with a friend just last night, and it's like when you improve your health, your actual whole outlook and perspective on life just is 10 times better.
Yeah.
And like you live a better life where you know how it feels. You've experienced a hangover before. Like it's just such a detrimental place to be in regards to the relationship that you have with yourself as well. Because you're like, it's almost like you don't give a shit about yourself. And just, I just think this conversation just bring a bit of light to like the negative effects of alcohol, and it's just awareness of the habit.
Yeah.
If you can tap back into that.
We should also talk about the positive effects of alcohol, like I said, because it does work. It's a great social lubricant.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I just want to have that
experience.
Balance. Yeah. It can enhance an experience. It can be a beautiful thing. It can really create deeper social bonds with people when it's used in the right way.
Yeah.
And a lot of cultures don't have the heaviness, I suppose, or the extremity of drinking that maybe we do. Like you go to certain cultures, maybe some places in like the south of France and stuff like that, and it's lovely. Like people are having a glass of wine with dinner.
I think they have control over it.
It's intent. They know what they're doing with it for the most part. Like I'm not saying they have this perfect culture around drink, but again, it's just a thing. It's how you use it and how it's implemented, and the cultural side of this country, particularly, it tends to lean more towards excessive use of alcohol, I suppose. And that always seems to be it's excess. When you use something in excess in an unconscious way, that's when there's a problem.
Yeah.
Same with steroids. Like steroids work. They're fucking unbelievable for doing what they do.
Yeah.
It's when they're abused.
It's a great point.
And they're used out of context and they're used in excess. That's when they become a problem.
Yeah, the Stoics said use everything in moderation.
Yeah. Don't do steroids, by the way.
Yeah. Or drink too much alcohol.
Or drink too much alcohol.
From one substance that kind of numbs your awareness to one that kind of heightens your awareness. You've done a podcast on this before about kind of psychedelics. Do you feel like psychedelics, should I say, are something that enhances your experience of this life and obviously heightens your awareness too? Or what's your views around that?
Great question. I like that question because it's the same. My answer is the exact same. I have seen, and I am not particularly well experienced. I have done a couple of ceremonies, plant medicine ceremonies, mushroom ceremonies, using psilocybin. I've had some experiences in the clinic that I worked in, etc. I wouldn't be a veteran by any stretch of the imagination. I have a fairly decent understanding of the mechanism, how they work and stuff, but not an expert. So here's my experience. I think when used as a tool to explore, to look at the monster under the house and to explore who you are and develop awareness and become a better person, and develop a sense of connection and really experience that sense of love and try and build a better life, incredible. Like, has transformed my life.
Wow.
Absolutely transformed my life. But I've also seen a lot of people who use them the exact same way alcohol is used. It's a distraction. It's a numbing. It's a chance to escape from the pain. It's escapism. It's like repeated use of these substances to try and not feel the way you feel. There's a very, very solid tenet in plant medicine or psychedelics. The work is done afterwards. It's in the implementation. It's the same as everything. It's not about reading the book about habits. It's about implementing that into your life. It's not about taking the mushrooms or the ayahuasca, whatever it is. It's about what you do after. It's about how you implement that in your life. And that's one thing I've been really, really focused on. I've only ever done, the last ceremony I did was about 18 months ago. I might do one in the next few months. But I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just going to the ceremony to try and feel great for a day or whatever it is. And then like, I'll go back for another one when I'm feeling a bit low. I wanted to take whatever learnings were in that and then look at my life and go, right, are you fucking doing this or are you full of shit? So the next time someone asks me a question like this, I could say, well, this is my experience with it. Not, I've done 763 ayahuasca retreats. Yeah. And they're fucking amazing. Do you know what I mean?
And not to get too personal with it, but like when you've done the psychedelic retreats, what is it that happens? Is it the insights that come into your mind? Is it the visual effects, or what is it?
Yeah, I think it's quite in terms of the experiential side of things. Like from a physiological point of view, it's pretty well understood what happens. But from an experiential side of things, it depends on the person. And it's so funny because the word they use all the time in there is intent. When you go in, when these places are run properly and these places are facilitated well, they talk to you about your intent. Why are you here? What do you want to? What are you hoping to get out of this? What are you looking for? What answers do you want? What work do you want to do? So you have to go in with a sense of intent. So it's not, now you can go in and say, I just want to let go and I want to be shown what I need to be shown. So you can take your hands off the wheel to a certain degree, but you go in, that's an intent. That is, your intent is to let go. So that is a conscious decision to let go. And my personal experience has been a deeper understanding of who I am as a human and what all of these feelings and emotions mean. So where are they coming from? And that's why I speak the way I do now about like they're coming from this pain. A lot of the things that I do are driven by how I feel about myself. I have, and again, it's not something that's overly private, I've shared this before, a feeling of insufficiency in my life, or feeling less than other people, or like I should be more than what I am now in several areas of my life or whatever. That's all driven from a deeper level of emotion. So what I found the psychedelics help you to do is to break down those outside layers, those protective layers you've built for yourself, to persona. And people might have heard this idea of ego dissolution when it comes to plant medicines. The ego is very important, helps us orientate ourselves and who we are in life, but this overdeveloped ego as a protective mechanism from the pain, it helps break that down. So you're no longer Dan or James, this idea of who you think you are. You're a more fundamental kind of core human with all these emotions and feelings and stuff like that, and you start to kind of see yourself as with a bit more compassion. I think that's a big thing I learned.
Yeah,
you look at yourself with more compassion, so you stop thinking like, oh, I'm worthless, and you're like, oh, I feel like this because of this. Now I need to maybe work on this. And then when you come out of the ceremony, whatever, and you talk about what you try and put a bit of shape and a bit of sense on what you saw, you recognize areas in your life where maybe you could be a little bit more compassionate with other people, maybe be a bit more compassionate with yourself, maybe you're missing a sense of connection. So that's something you could explore and work on in your day-to-day life. And you start to put the pieces together from what you've experienced in the ceremony and what your life looks like. So it's not a magic bullet. It's another tool.
Yeah.
If you go in and your intent is, I don't want to feel shit anymore, and you feel amazing for a while because you're on drugs essentially, and then you come back and then you're like, okay, that was brilliant. Now I'm going to do it again. You change nothing about your life or your environment, your intent. It's the same.
That's your responsibility to take what you've learned from the actual experience itself and implement
100%. Yeah. And the same thing, like you can build a support network for yourself, share this with your partner, talk about it with your friends, meet people who are doing similar things or who understand the plant medicine world, having people who can guide and facilitate that process, and they can help you understand, okay, James, this is what you've been through and these are the emotions you've experienced. That might be very confusing for you, but like, here's maybe how we can implement that into your life. That's why I think having the formal medical world and psychologists and psychiatrists really embrace this could be powerful. And they do it in like Canada. There's some place in the UK and the States now that do this. Obviously, it's a huge cultural thing in South America. But the whole idea is your healthcare system is embracing this as another tool to help develop you more as a person, bring you more self-awareness, because downstream from that, you're going to have way less issues with your physical health, with your psychological health. And like realistically, that's what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
But why do we not? Because it's not financially viable for for
And
the
I think
moment.
something you touched on there is that you developed compassion for yourself.
Yeah.
And greater connection as well. So you're showing yourself that's a sign that you love yourself, and that feeds into other areas and other relationships that you have in your life as well. So that's like a net positive.
Yeah.
Where when I think of drinking, it's like it affects it tends to affects relationships in your life in a negative sense. You feel disconnected from people. You might have been aggressive towards them. So well, it's kind of the polarity of the two.
Well, again, just to comment on that, alcohol is a net positive in my life at the moment.
Yeah, sorry, I'm speaking from a very general sense.
Yeah, and then the like plant medicine. Yeah, okay, with like mushrooms and stuff like that. The physiological negative effects are obviously different from drinking a bunch of pints to taking a bunch of mushrooms. Like it's not as bad for your body as far as we know at the moment. However, if it's the same dependency you have, if you're dependent on just doing loads of shrooms all the time just to escape your life, it's the same as just doing loads of pints all the time to escape your life. Yeah. Whereas my relationship with alcohol now, apart from the physiological effects, if you have 3 or 4 drinks, it's not good for your brain. Yeah. Apart from that, it's the same thing. It's your intent. My relationship with alcohol at the moment is net positive. I have a positive relationship with alcohol. I have a positive relationship with fucking mushrooms or whatever, but either one of those could go negative. I could develop a dependency on both, or and again, like it's important to say this, taking psychedelics, if you have stuff going on, if you have psychological issues and mental health issues that you're not dealing with, and that like it could really trigger a lot of that stuff. So it's not all net positive.
That's a good point.
But again, it's your intent. It comes back to your awareness and intent about everything. They're all just things, tools available to us to help us live our lives.
And how you use them.
And how you use them dictates the outcome.
Great point, Dan.
Yeah.
Great point. Tell me, just to kind of round things off on alcohol in a general sense, but like from your own experience, when you think of men and beer, etc., do you believe a real masculine man is the type of man to be drinking a beer, or how do you kind of view men that maybe drink beer in excess?
I think that image of the L fella with the stout is changing, because I think there is a conversation happening. It might be small at the moment, around like what is a man and what makes you a man, and this idea of toxic masculinity, and you have to shut your mouth and drink your pint and fucking go to work. I think that's shifting a little bit, which is a positive thing, obviously. You don't want it to shift too far. We don't want to lose the essence of, like, because I personally really enjoy this conversation around masculinity and the sense of taking responsibility and all that kind of stuff. We've talked about this before. I actually quite enjoy that. So we don't lose all of that and dilute it completely, but the kind of really rough edges on that, we're kind of starting to smooth off a bit. So I don't particularly see someone who drinks a bunch of pints as being more or less manly. For me, just based on everything I've said in the conversation today, it's the same thing. I just think that's the socially acceptable drink for most men. It's easily accessible. It's slightly cheaper. Most men and women will have like their routine. They start off having a few pints, then they might go onto the short, then they might hit a few shots, and then the bag comes in and all the bits and bobs. Like, but I don't particularly think the choice of drink makes a massive difference. Obviously, when you get into the health side of things, calories and all that kind of stuff, like have a vodka tonic if you want to keep your calories in, calories out, in check or whatever. But like,
it's crazy though. It's dubbed, especially beer in a general sense, is dubbed as a masculine drink.
Yeah. Pints.
Or I think it's feminizing men, because depending on the type, you know.
Yeah. But you're right in terms of the actual health effects. Murders your testosterone,
kills it completely.
It tend to develop. There's a lot more calories in beer, so you develop a lot more visceral and subcutaneous fat, which is not great for your hormone profile. Like, there's all these negative outcomes, but again, like, that's all downstream from the actual point for me. If a lad drinks beer and a lad drinks whiskey, it's probably a cultural thing for them. Either their mates drank whiskey or drank beer, their dad drank whiskey and they don't like it, or they had a bad experience with vodka, so they don't drink that. So like, all that stuff is kind of environmental factors or circumstantial. For me, it's more, I don't know how many men are driven to drink nowadays, or women, by the idea that it makes them more manly to drink beer. Yeah. Maybe there's a little bit of like, going for pints with the lads. That's kind of a manly thing to say.
Yeah.
But I think that's dissipating a little bit. I think the driver's deeper though for most people. I think it comes from a deeper place. It's that kind of pain or distraction or whatever. And like, let me just be really clear here. I don't think it has to be some deep fundamental level of dark depression that you're dealing with for you to go and have a few pints on a Friday. I don't think that's the reason for it. But like, even a mild sense of dissatisfaction with how you spend your work days, or a little bit of stress, or again, like I said before, just habit and circumstance. The lads do it every Friday, so you're going to go with them. It's the only time you get to see your friends, or you enjoy it when you whatever. Like, there's a bunch of different routes to get there. But it's, again, for me, the only issue arises when it becomes a habit or a dependency or unconscious or whatever like that.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem necessarily with people going drinking.
Yeah.
If it's conscious. Maybe everyone out there is a conscious drinker. I don't know.
Maybe so. So the takeaway message would be become conscious, become aware.
I think self-awareness, and it's such a boring answer for people to get when they listen to the podcast, because it's almost every conversation I have almost always comes back to it, like whether it's on mental health, alcohol, food, drink, performance, whatever, identity, almost always circles back around to awareness. Pat Divilly's line from Carl Jung is always in my head there. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. So until you bring that to the forefront of your mind, if it's unconscious, you're not in control of it. It's controlling you. So
you're asleep at the wheel.
You're asleep at the wheel. That's where the problem for me lies anyway. If you're not conscious about it, and making things conscious is a fucking grind.
Yeah.
It's so annoying to make things conscious.
And do you know what makes you more unconscious, Dan?
Alcohol. James, I'm really driving this point hard.
Driving it home. Dan, driving it home.
You don't want a whiskey after the podcast?
No, not this time.
When's the year starting, actually, by the way?
That's a good question. I think we're just going to start today.
Okay.
Because this is kind of...
You've heard it here, guys. Now, today, when the podcast is released, or right now?
Right now. Today
Friday the 26th.
26th July.
Friday the 26th July. Right. I'll see you in a year's time for the roundup to see how you get on.
Yeah.
I'm genuinely interested in this because, like, you're a very, very aware guy. And I don't believe you're doing this for... Well, I think most people do, which is the ego and the clout and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I do think it's going to improve your life. You're in a very transitionary phase in your life now as well. You're growing your business. You're becoming the kind of person you want to be. You're developing yourself as a man, as a person. So I'm interested to see how you get on and how it impacts your life, because I know you're like me. Like you're the guy who's given up drink. It doesn't really drink. When people were like, "You're giving up drink," you don't drink at all. I'm like. They're like, it's not a challenge. I was like, the point isn't for it to be a challenge. This isn't the thing. It's not Sober October. I'm not raising money for it. And this is why people think, well, you're doing this challenge. Like, fair play to you. You're doing a challenge. So I barely drink. So, like, it's not a challenge for me to do this.
It's not. It's just something I'm not doing.
I'm just not doing it anymore. I'm making a decision. And that's hard sometimes to understand for people. But, like, no, fair. I hate when people say this to me. So I'm going to say it to you. Fair play to you. Fair play to you for doing that. It's not a fair play thing.
It's not.
You're doing it for you.
Yeah.
Which I think is a great thing to do. Yeah.
Dan, listen, appreciate it.
How long we go?
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know. Probably in around... Now we're in 2.
Well, thank you, everybody, for listening to us. For
some great insights there.
Yeah, well, I hope so. Maybe someone will get some value out of it.
I'm sure they will. Awareness is the key, and then try and. I just think life can. People don't realize that life can be better without alcohol. That's the point I'm trying to.
Can
be.
Yeah,
Can be.
Yeah.
But look, each to their own. Dan.
Each to their own. Jamesy, pleasure as always.
Thank you very much. All the best.
Peace.
Peace.